Good morning. Welcome to RSBN Live as President Trump will be speaking to the UN General Assembly. This is the 80th edition of that conference, and we know that the Trump Doctrine was set way back in 2019 when he laid out his agenda not only for America first, but what he views the world to be. One that leaders should be representing their citizens with the utmost integrity and character and putting them first rather than globalist inhibitions and agendas. We know that the enemy is communism, it's Islamism, and it's secular globalist thought. And sadly, many members who will be at this General Assembly from around the world deeply believe and are committed to the destruction of the United States of America, whether it is through the BRICS nations and the changing of currency, getting rid of the dollar as the global standard, to those ideologies which I just mentioned. But regardless, President Trump thrives in this arena, and our late friend Charlie Kirk spoke often on the anti-fragile nature of President Trump. What did he mean by anti-fragile? Certain people, it's rare, thrive and almost look better, younger, and more productive and focused when all is up against them, when their backs are on the ropes. That is definitely true of President Donald Trump, as we can expect a little over 1 hour from now, a major address to the United Nations in New York City. And President Trump having some fun with it on Truth Social, and we'll play those videos over the course of the hour when it's Venezuela and mocking their militia, to where you can actually have very uncomfortable relationships coming together into this General Assembly room. We've seen in the past, dating back to the George W. Bush administration, when the Venezuelan leader at that time, Hugo Chavez, spoke of ashes and smolder and molder from hell that was from the prior leader, directing his comments over to former President George W. Bush. You've had the Iranian leadership simply walk out. When President Trump gave his Trump Doctrine speech in 2019, you had many prior to the Abraham Accords simply walk out for his defense of Israel. So we'll watch today as sadly Canada, the United Kingdom, and France have all endorsed a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine, and almost giving Hamas this leeway and an upper hand in those current negotiations. And as someone who has studied the two-state solution, even where the Jimmy Carter administration, dating back to the 70s, wanted to go with this, the truth is that Hamas and the Palestinian government, the PLO, the liberation organization that was under Yasser Arafat, always turns down the Israel peace agreements or trying to live in harmony. Is a two-state solution achievable? Seemingly not, because of where Hamas stands, dating back to October 7th and what they did in a terrorist attack that shook the world. Not only Israel, but the United States and countless Western countries, targeting civilians who are simply enjoying a night out in a concert on a beautiful evening with the sunset shining down upon them. They did not anticipate a horrible attack as such, with smuggling and trafficking then taking place, and roughly, as we know it now, still 48 hostages that are out there. And President Trump working diligently, attempting to bring this all to an end. So we'll see that major address delivered at 9:50 Eastern. Stick with us here. It's 1 hour from now at Right Side Broadcasting Network. And breaking news from Governor DeSantis's administration that today the governor is looking to an upcoming date of September 30th for a proposal to deed land for the Donald J. Trump Presidential Library. This will be in the free Sunshine State of Florida. He's meeting with the Board of Trustees in the Internal Improvement Trust Funds and will propose an item to convey at roughly a 263-acre parcel in Miami-Dade County. It's adjacent to the Freedom Tower for the Donald J. Trump Presidential Library. And what a site that will be. Something full of hope, something where countless Americans can visit and see the peace through strength and the America First agenda. So that will be upcoming news, and we look forward to that September 30th meeting. That will be with the governor, the board of trustees, also the commissioner of agriculture, to discuss breaking ground on that fantastic facility. And you have not been to presidential libraries in the past. They are museums and places where academics can go and students to look at the actual documents from an administration. And I love the interactive nature of many of them, including perhaps the greatest one that's out there right now, Ronald Reagan's Presidential Library, all the way in Simi Valley, California, where you can actually go onto. It's on loan from the Air Force One that he used on a regular basis. And it's like stepping back into the 1980s, into his office, also the First Lady's quarters where the press would be, and his jacket as well, his Air Force One jacket of the 40th President of the United States. So a great thing to take the family to. As we thank our sponsors, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. It's flu season, so get ready for that. Prep Tamiflu, antibiotics to antivirals, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, NAD+, and methylene blue. We have the 10% off code now, RSBN10. That's RSBN10. Scan that QR code now. Prepare your medicine cabinet before flu season. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Truly your go-to, because when someone develops that cough or that fever almost overnight, and we know that if you have little kids this time of year, they definitely do that. It's good to have the medicine cabinet prepped and ready to go. It's no red tape. It's no bureaucracy. Even if you have no insurance, all you need is a pharmaceutical note, and these doctors and health care providers, pharmacists, are dear patriots, and they want you to have this ready so that your family can stem off what could be a life-threatening flu season. You can also take these 200-plus essential medications on the road with you if you have a fall vacation upcoming. So again, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Prepare your medicine cabinet before flu season. 10% off with RSBN 10. After you take care of all of that for your flu season, make sure to look at your wealth, your savings, your retirement, and perhaps those pensions that you have coming in that could be all lost with a market crash. It's monetary gold for the win. RSBN4thegold.com. That's where you can visit to receive your complimentary presidential gold guide. Robert Kiyosaki, a friend of President Trump, you might remember his writings such as Rich Dad, Poor Dad, speaking on this very issue that two banks have failed in 2025 and gold and silver standing the test of time. These hot commodities, these precious metals, have stood the test of time for over 5,000 years, regardless of the type of government, regardless of the leadership that's in place. Call today. Don't delay. It's 800-476-7790. Ask how to eliminate your annual IRA fees for life. Call immediately to discover how you can eliminate your IRA fees permanently. It's at RSBN4thegold.com. Grab your complimentary presidential gold guide with all the information there. No obligation, just information to protect your wealth, securities, retirement, the things you've worked hard for. RSBN4thegold.com. Thank you for your sponsorship here on the right side of history, as it's a big day in news, a big day for President Trump and his team to deliver a major address at the United Nations General Assembly at 9:50 this morning. It will be the Trump 2.0 MAGA doctrine on full display, one that is seeking peace, one that has produced peace, one that in roughly 250 days into the new administration has called for action of all citizens, of all backgrounds, to do what they can because they're born for such a time as this, to peacefully and patriotically serve their country. And again, that idea of that's been proposed by the far left of, oh, diversity, equity, inclusion, multiculturalism, all masked by this wolves in sheep clothing of illegal immigration, the crime that has happened because of the prior Autopen administration. So much of that coming to an end in a quick manner while reshaping the entire global trade and economy with the use of tariffs and brand new trade deals. How many countless deals now with the United Kingdom, as President Trump was just there last week. Sadly, though, our friends with their left-wing leadership in Canada and the United Kingdom and France have decided to endorse the two-state solution and give a pass to Hamas after the terrible terrorist attacks of October 7th, 2023. That'll be something to watch in this speech, and who will stay, who might go. We've seen that adversaries and friends alike coming together in this assembly hall for what is the 80th edition of the UN General Assembly. Now, the White House producing quite a tribute video of the events this weekend and honoring the life and the legacy of Charlie Kirk at Glendale's State Farm Stadium, where the Arizona Cardinals play. Amazing to see that Charlie's vision, as he would tell us at Turning Point USA, we have to fill the biggest stadiums throughout the country, ultimately throughout the world. And that was done on Sunday with hundreds of thousands, by the count of the Glendale Police Department, simply attending, and many not being able to actually go into the stadium for various security reasons, but also just simple overflow. And with the fire marshal saying, no, this can't happen, they fill up a stadium next door, the Desert Diamond Arena, within that Westgate Entertainment area in the West Valley. It was truly a sight to see, to pay tribute to an extraordinary man. And the White House doing that same thing with cut number 4, Mr. Producer, a White House video on Charlie's memory, as we saw amazing speeches from Tucker Carlson to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, but the showstopper being that of Erica Kirk, who forgave her husband's would-be assailant. Superhuman blessings from on high to be able to do that, and following the example of her Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, as he forgave on the cross. They know not what they do. And in turn doing the exact same thing as was taught as what a true Christian would do. An amazing thing to watch, and countless commentators throughout this country speechless in awe of her ability to do so. And the Comforter-in-Chief consoling her, consoling hundreds of thousands in this movement with some comedy, with some tears, with smiles, and the life and the legacy of someone who is irreplaceable. So we'll go to that White House recap video on Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk.
If you knew him, you love him. Charlie Kirk was an incredible man.
One of the strongest, bravest people that I know.
Charlie has the work ethic of no one I have ever met in my life. I don't think it can be understated, the impact that he had.
One of the greatest communicators of the generation.
He was more than just somebody who would comment on the news.
He genuinely respected and genuinely loved, in a Christian manner, the people on the other side of the table. He didn't hate anybody.
He would give the shirt off a back to help someone that was in need, regardless of their political stripe.
His ideas were about faith, family, freedom.
This young man with an idea that became a movement.
What he built is part of his legacy, but also part of that legacy, more importantly, is a husband and a father.
Irreplaceable. He was irreplaceable.
He's a one of one.
Right? Charlie Kirk was at the tip of the spear, never flinched, never backed off.
He wanted that back and forth, but not out of anger, not out of a place of he wanted to humiliate them or embarrass them or something like that, because he wanted to actually try to communicate with them.
He went into the belly of the beast, he went on these college campuses, and he evangelized.
This man who had a life force that was so much bigger than himself.
If everything completely goes away, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. The most important thing is my faith in my life.
I hope that the story of Turning Point USA, again, we started with no money, no connections, and no idea what I was doing, resonates with some of you.
Government sucks!
It's a nonprofit called Turning Point USA. To despair is a sin. And some people say, oh, Charlie, it's too hard. It's too overwhelming. It's too dark. Snap out of it. You still live in the greatest nation ever to exist in the history of the world. There is still so much to be hopeful and to be thankful for. And we have agency. The globalists are worried that you are waking up. They're worried that their fraud and their nonsense is finally being exposed, and you are at the central nerve of all of that. Ask God how to use you. Find a place to plug in. I am thankful for you. We had a vision because we love the country. Push yourself harder. Here I am. Lord, use me.
You guys might remember a year ago, I gave the whole speech of here I am, Lord, send me. And it was kind of this joke that we had as soon as I gave that message.
I remember him getting off stage and I say, honey, do you realize what you just did? He's like, yeah, I just, and I was like, no. You said, here I am. That is a very powerful statement. And God's like, I see you. Charlie is so obedient to God, to the word of God. And it's been so humbling to witness the way that God has used him this year, because he made that declaration a year ago saying, here I am, I'm ready. Wherever you need me to be, Lord, I'll be, and I'm your servant. Just put me out there in the thick of it.
You see, they wanted us to be quiet and afraid and silent and subservient. They wanted us to cower into our corner. But the conservative movement has changed fundamentally. I hope you guys understand this. This is the greatest country ever to exist in the history of the world. And I can say, wow, there was a debate. Is God done with this country? And now I can say confidently, no. God is not done with America, and our best days are ahead.
Thank you to angelpaste.com for sponsoring us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. For the Vitamin B Miracle Cream, it's the miracle you want to experience out of Spring, Texas, right off the Gulf of America. Non-GMO, no chemicals, just good old vitamin B. And also this time of year, the orange option, vitamin C infused, non-GMO, no chemicals. Experience the miracle that is angelpaste.com. All of their different products, including a natural mosquito repellent, also a natural facial spray. Angelpaste.com, amazing, great product, great Christians as well. They are celebrating that throughout the entire company. They also hire veterans. Again, out of the Lone Star State of Texas, it's angelpaste.com. You can also go to calci.com/RSBN, who will win the Nobel Peace Prize. I think Donald Trump deserves that, especially considering he is looking into the belly of the beast of the UN General Assembly and secular globalists who seek to usurp the beauty of what this country stands for. Will Zelensky meet with Putin before January? All of these questions, if it's going to be a bilateral meeting to a trilateral meeting, you can scan that QR code now, trade on anything, including questions like who will win the World Series as the baseball playoffs get under in roughly a week leading into October and the Fall Classic. So it's music, sports, culture, politics, all calci.com/RSBN. Thank you for your sponsorship here on the right side of history. And President Trump saying on Sunday in Glendale, Arizona, that the lesson of Charlie's life is that you should never underestimate what one person can do with a good heart. A righteous cause, a cheerful spirit, a will to fight, fight, fight. Charlie Kirk started with only an idea to change minds on college campuses, and instead he ended up with a far greater achievement, changing history. Well done, good and faithful servant, as Matthew 25:23 ringing out throughout the crowd. I've never seen a sight quite like it, where countless thousands of people walking, and you saw our footage outside of the arena, simply with statements like, we the people, we are Charlie Kirk, God and country, we love Charlie and Erica. Very simple statements, all very solemn, as they came from around the world, around the country, and definitely within State 48 to pay tribute to the Kirk family. And that's something that's such a great solace if you know someone going through such a terrible situation. As Charlie mentioned, do not despair. It is sin to despair. Have hope and move forward. And in some cases, get over that situation through God that you're going through in order to be a blessing unto others. That's what his mission was. That was his dream. And that's why we're all asking, how could we do better? How could we each be more like Charlie Kirk? That's how I'm starting my days. How can I be more like my friend, my former boss, an amazing individual who taught me so much and found so much within me in order to push my limits professionally and even personally. And that's how I'll carry out my days, having this unique privilege and opportunity to bring all of you this unbridled access to the government you put into place, as we will witness the MAGA doctrine, the America First policies, the peace through strength of President Donald Trump's administration. Almost all of the cabinet in attendance for Charlie's memorial, mind you, and many with him there, his national security team, to put this country on the forefront of a golden era as we approach 250 years of existence. Now, there is evidence that suggests a link between what you find in Tylenol and autism. The Trump administration does not believe popping more pills is always the answer for better health. There is mounting evidence finding a connection between the Tylenol and the use during pregnancy and autism. And that's why the administration is courageously issuing a new health guidance. In case you missed the announcement just yesterday with his health team and with Secretary Kennedy of Health and Human Services. Additionally, the Trump administration is approving a new treatment option that has been found to improve some of those symptoms. President Trump pledged to address America's skyrocketing rates of autism, and his team is deploying gold standard science to deliver on this very pledge. We will not be deterred in these efforts, as we know millions across America are grateful. This was a statement by Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt after the announcement yesterday. Now, President Trump joined administration officials to announce major progress in understanding the root causes of autism, which has exploded in diagnosis over the last 2 decades, and unveiled the bold new initiatives to tackle the autism epidemic. Evidence suggests that the use of Tylenol in pregnant women, especially late in pregnancy, may cause long-term neurological effects in their children. Large-scale cohort studies, including the Nurses' Health Study and the Boston Birth Cohort, report associations between utero exposure and later diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, otherwise known as ADHD. Scientists have proposed biological mechanisms linking prenatal exposure to altered brain development and adverse birth outcomes. And many doctors actually commenting on this very issue, including those at Harvard University, that there's a connection between the use of Tylenol and autism or even ADHD. John Hopkins speaking on it, Mount Sinai as well, in a 2021 internal consensus statement highlighting a call for precautionary action, recommending that pregnant women minimize this exposure by using the lowest effective dose for the shortest possible time. Now, we know that practice was happening as well, because if you have prolonged fever during a pregnancy, that can cause neurological damage as well. So the consensus in health for roughly the last 2 decades was take Tylenol, that is okay to do so. But we're now learning that there may be this link to that, including scheduling out of different vaccines and not having as many inoculations as was once required within that short period of time. And that's why each and every person should have that ability of not only bodily autonomy, but going between them and their doctor for what's best for their children, as was advised yesterday by President Trump and his team at the White House. So this will be an ongoing story, and we will watch that extraordinarily closely as we thank Tax Network USA for their sponsorship here on the right side of history. Do you owe back taxes? And are your tax returns still unfiled? Did you forget to file an extension? Because October 15th is the deadline, fast approaching from the original April 15th deadline. Time is running out. If you have not gathered all of your documents or made any estimated payments, you could soon be targeted by the IRS. And we know that this administration does not mess around like the prior administration that was playing games with the courts, perpetuating and putting extended deadlines on student loans. And we saw the chaos with all that might affect your bank account and ultimately had the IRS garnish your wages, freeze your bank accounts, or even seize your property. There's help available through Tax Network USA. Call today. Don't delay. It's 800-357-1415, 800-357-1415. Protect yourself from the IRS and settle those back taxes now. Visit tnusa.com. They filed hundreds of thousands of tax returns, saving people over $1 billion, assisting thousands in reducing their tax burdens. They can help you as well. Again, tnusa.com/RSBN. It is the go-to Tax Network USA, tnusa.com, to settle those back taxes, of course, /RSBN. Our sponsors at Patriot Addict have just received another shipment of the Trump Combat Knives. So get yours today. It's 47knife.com. These knives are selling for $69, and it goes down to $65 if you purchase a 3 bundle. On top of that, they are giving us 30% off with coupon code RSBN30. So scan that QR code now. Visit 47knife.com. These knives, super high quality. I have one myself, the Trump Combat Knife. They're durable and amazing, every day to carry in combat. Knives, they are a must-have if you are a Trump supporter. And since it is a 3-pack, and since he's coming back on air, I'm going to give my friend Jimmy Kimmel one, since I don't think he has one, as a way of welcoming him back and as a competition to see who has the biggest viewership this week. I think we're going to have more here at Right Side Broadcasting. Since when he went off the air, he was averaging around 129,000 per week. So, Jimmy, my goodness, you got to get those numbers up, my friend. Or Sinclair and Nexstar and perhaps the Disney company will say au revoir once and for all. So I'll have a Trump knife waiting for you for Christmas and Hanukkah celebrations only 3 months away. So visit 47knife.com. Get yours today. 30% off now with code RSBN30. Scan that QR code now as President Trump is minutes away from a big speech at the UN General Assembly. What you see there is really the entrance hall to a modernistic, quite frankly, sad building that houses very extreme voices throughout this world. We'll see quickly why President Trump is the man for the job, because there are countless violent communist, Islamist, and secular globalist voices who want to run the world, who want to run you, and their perverted way of thinking will not succeed in dominating the West, because we are Bible-believing Christians founded on documents that talk about that our rights come from God, not from government. But President Trump will be in the room with those who directly oppose those life-giving principles. In his major speech from 2019, he laid out the Trump MAGA doctrine, that we will put America first, that, in fact, leaders around the world should put their countries first and their citizens first. And this is a speech given post the Abraham Accords, post making peace with 7 different major conflicts from around the world, including Azerbaijan and Armenia, to Israel and Iran with the 12 Days War, to Rwanda and the Congo. Also our friends in Cambodia and Thailand who had major issues. Pakistan to India. President Trump has been in the middle of the firestorm, making new trade deals, giving access to our markets, having that tariff threshold, and stating that if you continue to fight, if you continue the bloodshed and the tribal warfare in many cases, we simply won't trade with you. He's restructured all of the global economy through the use of tariffs. So whether it be the Chamber of Commerce, to any left-wing entity that's out there, tariffs work. You could actually use free and fair trade by threatening tariffs on a global level. That's why countless countries came crawling back to President Trump when he put the bottom lines across the country nearly immediately when he took the oath of office back on January 20th. And it's bringing billions and billions of dollars back into the United States to slowly but surely get rid of $37 trillion of debt thanks to President Trump's living predecessors in the office of the presidency of the United States. Sadly, though, even though we have great new trade deals with the United Kingdom, President Trump, off the heels of that state dinner, that visit to the United Kingdom, being received by His Majesty King Charles III with glowing terms, talking of York, England to New York City to Birmingham, England to Birmingham, Alabama, our two nations share a common bond across the pond. Really the ethos of Western civilization in so many ways, with British common law to English history and to a revolution where we said we can self-govern better than a far distant monarch thousands of miles away. And I really enjoyed that line from His Majesty King Charles III, that the rebel commander who would become the first president of the United States, the inaugural holder of the great office that Donald Trump currently occupies, he would not dare dream. He wrote about never stepping foot on British soil. In turn, King Charles III, his 5 times removed great-grandfather, King George III, never dreamed of setting foot again on what was once British soil, now an American Republican constitutional government created nearly 250 years ago to reflect upon those things. Very special last week to see the respect that's around the world. So for those who might put out this idea that this country is not respected, that this country is not feared, they simply have their head in the sand. Perhaps they're not watching Right Side Broadcasting Network, so make sure they like, share, and subscribe so they could see the entire speeches, that they can see the hearings, that they can watch a UN General Assembly speech, the 80th edition of this meeting, where we won't cut back to us with President Trump speaking. You'll see the entirety of the speech at your go-to live desk at 9:17 Eastern. In the last several days, being riddled with countless news and focused on the future, as President Trump puts in countless hours to take on the radical elements, not only within our country, but abroad. And sadly, he has to focus now and move forward, especially securing more Middle East peace, with Canada, the UK, and France all endorsing Palestine and a 2-state solution, going against the wishes of the United States foreign policy. So we're awaiting his arrival to the UN General Assembly. That is the front door, for lack of a better term, into the hall. And we will watch as his team will come in through there momentarily, last night coming into New York City. But President Trump is not backing down from crushing radical left violence in America. He is right. The violence problem is on the left. You've been hearing a lot of this go on with this. It's on both sides. No, it's not on both sides. It's a left-wing, violent, trans, psychotic ideology, and people need help. It's about mental health in this country. And therefore, he has designated Antifa a network of radical left terrorists that aim to overthrow the government through violence and agitation as a domestic terrorist organization. I'm being told as well that President Trump is moments away, along with the First Lady of the United States, who will be conducting her own meetings during this UN General Assembly and meeting with leaders throughout the world. We can anticipate their arrival momentarily from now, so stay with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Antifa has a long history of terrorizing our communities. I have a personal story of copycats dating back to 2018 when we were a very small Turning Point USA. 5 copycats came into the door of what would be the Midwest Regional Conference in Rosemont, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, and about 10 minutes from Chicago O'Hare International. And these 5 masked characters came running in, screaming all different kinds of chants against Charlie, against Turning Point, against fascists, although they have shown themselves to be the fascists. And they decided to light garbage cans on fire. Well, that got them arrested and in jail almost immediately. But they've done even worse. In July of 2025, members of Antifa and its cell abused and ambushed officers at an ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas. After defacing vehicles with anti-ICE graffiti, including ICE Pig and FU Pigs, the assailants lured officers out of the building and opened fire, shooting one officer in the neck. In July of 2025, deranged rioters viciously assaulted federal agents at an ICE facility in Portland, Oregon. Officers at the facility, which had been targeted by the local Antifa chapter, their terror cell for weeks, were kicked, punched, and targeted with an incendiary device. Back in February of 2024, a transgender Antifa terrorist detonated an explosive device outside the office of Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall. The terrorist left behind numerous stickers with Antifa slogans and anarchist symbols. In March of 2023, Antifa radicals laid siege to a planned police training center in Atlanta, Georgia, something the radical left Democrats I saw firsthand being involved in Georgia politics have joined with their Antifa brethren in trying to stop this facility that will help countless citizens and residents of the Peach State. They attacked police with Molotov cocktails, booby traps, and commercial-grade fireworks, deeming that justice will be brought upon them if they continue these unspeakable acts. Thank you to covepure.com/RSBN. It's the machine that looks just like a coffee maker. And did you know Utah, Florida passing legislation to get fluoride, chemicals, agricultural runoff all out of the water? That's the mission of this reverse osmosis system. In fact, it's the best in the business because their clear water technology removes 99.9% of the impurities in the water. You could see there on display, you could choose your temperature of water, hot, cold, lukewarm, to get your day started. Morning prayer and good tasting H2O, nice pure H2O is the best to start those days off. You can scan the QR code there now, covepure.com/RSBN, get $200 off this machine that's making a difference in the lives of countless people around our great country. Did you also know that when people take vitamins to antibiotics to hormone disruptors like birth control, it doesn't get fully absorbed in the system? So that runoff goes through water treatment facilities down the toilet, and they don't catch all of it. And that can go right into your tap. And you don't want your kids drinking that. You don't want what JAMA Pediatrics found, that if children are drinking the tap water on a regular basis without Cove Pure, this great reverse osmosis technology, of clear water technology, in fact, they will lose 2 or more points in IQ over a period of time. So it's not worth taking that risk. covepure.com/RSBN. It is your go-to reverse osmosis system. Get $200 off now, covepure.com/RSBN. And make sure that you stock up for the fall flu season and COVID prevention with allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Prepare your medicine cabinet before this happens. 10% off now with code RSBN10, RSBN10. Scan that QR code there. Tamiflu, antibiotics, antivirals, hydrochloroquine, ivermectin, NAD+, methylene blue, 200 essential medications, emergency medical kits. Also, if there's no Insurance, there's no worries, no red tape, no bureaucracy, just doctors and pharmacists looking to take care of you. We will also have a special running this week where I interview David McCary, the chief pharmacist, and Michael Kunzler, the co-owner of All Family Pharmacy, to dive into these very issues, especially having immune support and that Tamiflu on hand in case someone overnight has those coughs, the fevers, the chills that come along with seasonal flu. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Thank you for sponsoring us here at the right side of history. As we await President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump and the National Security Team to make their arrival at the UN General Assembly through those front doors in a very modern-looking building. It's really perhaps the ugliest building in New York City, if you're just wanting my honest take on it. But regardless, President Trump will be presenting the MAGA Doctrine 2.0. That's what we anticipate. America first, peace through strength, common sense, and a call to the world to reject communism, Islamism, secular globalist thought, the unholy triumvirate that is seeking to usurp Western values, civilization built on the Bible, something we've been reminded of in this revival we've experienced, and the hope that we received from Sunday with Charlie Kirk's memorial service out in Glendale, Arizona, something he dreamed of doing throughout his career to fill stadiums, fighting for free enterprise, the American way of life, the Constitution, and our founding documents, free speech, in turn becoming a church service where two or more gather, we know the Lord is present. Well, there were hundreds of thousands of people inside of State Farm Stadium, to the Desert Diamond Arena, throughout the Westgate Entertainment Complex, and a reminder that God is real, he is alive, and Charlie is more alive than ever before. At some point on social media, I'll share pictures before leaving and coming back to our home studios right here in the loveliest village on the plains of Auburn, Alabama. I stopped in one of my favorite churches, the Basilica of St. Mary in downtown Phoenix, the oldest church in the valley, from dating back to 1885 in that mission architecture, now ran by Franciscan missionaries and the Diocese of Phoenix and the Roman Catholic Church. And I prayed at a location where on September 14th of 1987, Pope St. John Paul II knelt in prayer in his visit to that very spot. And I almost dreamt in prayer of the late pontiff and Charlie wearing heavenly versions of Socialism Sucks t-shirts. They preached that message, that communism is the antithesis of human liberty, that the two do not coincide. And if you look at the history between them, communism, whether it be in Russia, to even fascism in Germany throughout the 1930s and 40s, something that Glenn Beck and Dinesh D'Souza reminded us of with their amazing writings, that these meetings would take place in Italy and somehow have been left out of the history books 100 years later, that the communists and fascists were actually working together towards that socialist thought. They broke off to fight later on, but they were both against the church. They were both against what Western civilization brought us, the foundations of constitutional monarchy and constitutional Republican government that argued rights come from God, not from government. We know that evil cannot be negotiated with, and this president recognizes that. In his words at Charlie's memorial on Sunday, and I'm sure upcoming in roughly 20 minutes from now, we will see an anti-fragile leader, as Charlie Kirk put it over the years, that Donald Trump becomes younger, more determined, looks better, the more that's thrown at him. It's a rare quality of people and a rare quality that we found in this president. Back in January of 2022, an Antifa radical was arrested for bringing a pipe bomb at a pro-Trump event. The individual spotted all black clothing and charged with multiple counts of possessing a homemade explosive device. In January of 2021, an Antifa supporter threatened to shoot police officers and Trump supporters outside of the Florida state capitol in Tallahassee. Now, this suspect was tied to the radical left's violent protests in Seattle's autonomous zone, which resulted in several deaths. In August of 2020, a self-identified Antifa member shot and killed a Patriot Prayer supporter during a riot in Portland. The suspect was later killed after he brandished a weapon while law enforcement attempted to apprehend him on murder charges. Back in 2020, Antifa terrorists designated a substantial portion of the Capitol Hill neighborhood in Seattle as a so-called autonomous zone. I met one of those individuals who's an Uber driver now in Washington, D.C. He recognized all of our media kit, did not know Right Side Broadcasting, and started talking about how he harassed police officers and showing us footage of it, whether it be in Washington, D.C., all the way to the autonomous zone, taking it over and enacting its own delusional structure of self-governance. This led to violent clashes with police and multiple deaths and injuries. In July of 2019, another self-proclaimed Antifa radical attacked an ICE facility in Tacoma, Washington. In 2017, Antifa radicals threw rocks at police and attacked the attendees of several conservative political events at UC Berkeley. That's where free speech was born, based on liberal activists who were protesting the Vietnam War. It's now turned violent. I've had friends of mine punched in the face for tabling at the University of California at Berkeley and sharing the free speech message. Antifa's terrorist attacks are part of the trend of the radical left violence we've seen in the nation in recent years, incited by constant lies and vicious attacks against Republicans from Democrats and politicians, well-funded leftist organizations, and their allies in the media, including people like a late-night so-called comedy host who's not funny at all, who's coming back tonight. I'm sure he'll have great ratings. In 2025, Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a radical left terrorist. We know that now, as the FBI expands its investigation into what happened at Utah Valley University. This year alone, Tesla dealerships and vehicles across the country firebombed as deranged left-wing lunatics protested the Trump administration. Radical left lunatics rioted in Los Angeles, attacking law enforcement and hurling projectiles at police cruisers, burning vehicles, and shutting down freeways, all while flying the Mexican flag. Now, do you really think they were residents of this country, legal residents, and they weren't paid agitators? Sadly, the left is very well organized. This year again, 2 Israeli embassy staffers were killed in Washington, D.C. by a deranged man who shouted "Free Palestine" before shooting them. The Republican Party of New Mexico, their offices were targeted by an arson attack and graffitied with ICE equals KKK slogans. We've seen George Soros and his team do that in the past, all learning Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. If you study any of that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this year again, the Republican Party of Virginia's Manassas headquarters were vandalized on Independence Day. A man threw 2 Molotov cocktails at the Dickinson County Republican Committee headquarters in Michigan to, quote, send a message. I can go through a whole litany of these different far-left attacks inspired by Democrat politicians and funded by so-called philanthropists like George Soros. But you've seen what our side does when we are so violently attacked. We hold vigils, we pray, hundreds of thousands come together and worship Jesus Christ in a football stadium outside of Phoenix, Arizona. Including the life and legacy of this man, Mike Lindell, someone who loved Charlie Kirk, who has been so good to our network, and who has been a dear friend on the campaign trail. The 6-piece towel set back in stock. It usually goes for $70. Now it's down to under $40, $39.98. MyPillow.com/RSBN. Call today. Do not delay. 800-836-7566. Support Mike Lindell and Right Side Broadcasting Network by shopping now. MyPillow.com/RSBN. Save with code RSBN. Now, we know Mike Lindell. He fights for free speech, election integrity. Heck, he might run for governor of Minnesota, telling our very own Matthew Alvarez last week. I am strongly considering it. We'd love to see that here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Thank you to Mike Lindell and MyPillow.com/RSBN. If you like what you see with your go-to live desk, we were your rally network for nearly a decade. But now we are your go-to live desk ever since January. So support us right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's rsbnetwork.com/donate. You could text RSBN to 801-801. Support us right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. rsbnetwork.com/donate or text RSBN to 801-801. Thank you for your dollars, your support as we take on the legacy media. You can also send a check or money order to 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6. It's Box 344 in the loveliest village on the plains. It's Auburn, Alabama, 36830. It's 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. And the big news coming from Auburn just yesterday, our friend Bruce Pearl, the coach of the basketball team, retiring, announcing that after 11 years. So Godspeed to Coach Bruce Pearl, a dear man who's been a staple, him and his family, right here in the loveliest village on the plains. We hope to have him on the network to discuss the future and how he might be involved in the golden era moving forward and outside of the basketball world. So stay tuned for that and other great commentary and interviews this week. Now, as we go through what is disturbing but necessary, we're highlighting what Antifa has done in this country as President Trump designating them a terrorist organization before his speech to the UN General Assembly. That's what you're witnessing there if you're just tuning in. The front entrances to the United Nations for the 80th edition of this General Assembly meeting. Something that brings together foes and friends in the entire civilized world. And I say civilized in quotations because some of the people here that are members of the United Nations are quite uncivilized, are people that endorse communism, Islamism, and secular globalist thought that seek to destroy the West. That's what's in their way. It's you and me. It's you going to a school board meeting or running for your city council or jumping into a congressional race. As people who own businesses, think about the names of people like Lauren Boebert to Marjorie Taylor Greene to Matt Gaetz, among countless others, some of them never even imagining that they'd be in the halls of Congress until they saw a government that became too large and too bureaucratic, and the failures of the Barack Hussein Obama and Otto Penn administrations inspired them to run for office and represent their local communities. What can you do come 2026? Whether it's phone calls or knocking on doors, getting out there for your neighbor who's decided to throw their hat in the ring for races from the United States Senate to the House, all the way down to dog catcher. We have the ability, as Charlie Kirk spoke of, Christians are called to correct the errors in society, and we all fall short of the glory of God. But what can we put aside and say, I'm going to serve, I'm going to get my ego out of the way, and I'm going to help save this nation? Because our founders put into the parameters the ability to course correct. And Charlie spoke about that at every single event, whether it be at a church or a college campus, to go out there and proclaim not only the gospel, but how that gospel and the greatest story ever told, now over 2,000 years ago, inspired the United States of America. That 55 of 56 of our signers of the Declaration of Independence were Bible-believing Christians. That 9 of the first 13 states, the original colonies, required you to give a statement of faith, to be a Bible-believing, church-attending Christian in order to serve in the halls of government, whether it be township to state, any other local office to federal office. We have quite a legacy. And President Trump speaking on that last week in the United Kingdom during the state dinner with His Majesty King Charles III, the uncommon bond between our two great nations, to the memorial on Sunday as he became comforter-in-chief to Erica Kirk, the widow and now CEO of Turning Point USA, the widow of Charlie Kirk. She brought down the house, did she not? Amazing to watch robust speeches, not only from those who knew him best, but Secretary of State Marco Rubio, to White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, all proclaiming the gospel. Stephen Miller talking about the very issue that President Trump might talk about today, of what we have versus what the secular left, far left globalists possess, and what they seek to do to this country. America is their biggest problem because of what we believe in and the good that we have stood for nearly 250 years. And it's true. Abraham Lincoln was right about this. In the middle of the 19th century in a bloody civil war, that we will not be destroyed from the outside. It's nearly impossible. Consider what we have gone through as a country. It will only be done from the inside. And sadly, I've come to the realization over my career that it's a three-headed serpent and an unholy triumvirate of communism, Islamism, and radical secular globalist thought. It's a perversion of natural law and the natural order, and goes against men and women who are of goodwill, who might not be Christian by title or belief, but wish the goodwill for humanity. Those three elements are united. They know who they are. They know what they want. And it's complete globalist one world power. And we all have a role to play in stopping that perversion. And whether you take inspiration from Charlie Kirk and the college campuses and within the churches, or from your pastor who's speaking and boldly proclaiming the word of Christ, or if it's just those in your community who are standing up and who are doing what most people believe, the 80-20 issues, rather they should be 93-7, that boys should not be in girls' locker rooms, period. That the family around the kitchen table knows better about how to move forward in the future than what the government does. Common truths that have been agreed upon across generations. I'm sure we'll get elements and sprinkles of that in this speech today, as President Trump expected to speak in 7 minutes to the UN General Assembly. We are currently awaiting his arrival right through the front doors of the building there in New York City that houses the United Nations, and foreign soil right there within the United States in Manhattan. So we look forward to that, and we'll bring you right there as we expect President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump and the national security team to come through the door really any minute from now. Now this year, we've seen so much violence, and it's coming from the far left. It's not a two sides issue. So if you have a neighbor or a family member or friend talking about, oh, it's on both sides, really implore them to do some homework, to do some research, and for them to realize that it's a problem on the far left. There's no question about that. 2 children killed, 17 people injured at a Catholic church in Minnesota just weeks ago by a transgender individual whose manifesto included plans to kill Donald Trump. That was in quotes. It really goes back to, it's like the airport or any public transit that says, if you see something, say something. The only way for evil to succeed in this world is for good men to do nothing. I am more convinced of it now than ever. If you see something strange, please activate and do something about it. Go to the authorities. Peacefully and patriotically serve one another. Because Irina Zarutska, what happened to her in North Carolina should not happen to anyone. To be stabbed like that, and to people initially just sitting there on their phones. get out of your devices and get into the world and serve it. I think the events of this year and recent times remind us of that. As we thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network at 945, Monetary Gold, its wealth, its security, its preservation. Robert Kiyosaki warned us about how markets can collapse, and this will be far worse than 2008 and a housing crisis that bailed out Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, those big ones. They're not coming to help you, and the middle class will bear the brunt of a collapse in the market. And as $37 trillion in debt still exists because of President Trump's predecessors and the neoliberals and the neocons who really screwed over this country, gold and silver are your precious commodities and go-tos to save your retirement, your pension, all your savings that you worked so hard for. So call now. Call today. Don't delay. It's 800-476-7790, 800-476-7790. Ask how to eliminate your annual IRA fees for life. It's RSBNforthegold.com. Grab your complimentary presidential gold guide. Call immediately to discover how you can eliminate those IRA fees permanently. RSBNforthegold.com. You can also visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Prepare your medicine cabinet before the flu season. It's code RSBN10 for 10% off. Tamiflu, antibiotics, antivirals, also immune support to hydrochloroquine, NAD+, methylene blue, ivermectin, and everything in between. In fact, over 200 essential medications at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. So scan that QR code now. Prepare your medicine cabinet before flu season. It's no red tape, no bureaucracy, just great doctors and pharmacists that want the best for you. Allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN as President Trump is en route to the United Nations. And he came to New York City just yesterday, putting in those countless hours to serve this great country of ours. In 2024, leftists celebrated Luigi Mangione for gunning down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, a young father with young kids. How can you do that to someone? It's just absolutely terrible. We know that President Trump was shot in an attempted assassination at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. 6 weeks later, he was targeted for a second assassination in Palm Beach, Florida, while playing golf. We know what that psychopath is doing in the courtroom right now. I just don't even want to bother to say his name because he does not deserve the PR. And in 2024, the Republican National Committee headquarters was evacuated after receiving vials of blood addressed to Trump. It's not a two-side issue here. This is all from the far left. And for late-night hosts to accuse MAGA of all of this, they know that they're not telling the truth. They know that they're trying to incite violence with their words. You know, and that's what I thought about the left. I thought that words hurt people. That was their big claim to fame. Well, I guess only when it's for them. Let's toss over to the president and First Lady Melania Trump.
Mr. President, any deals with Zelensky and Putin? Mr. President, any deals with Zelensky and Putin? President, Russia and NATO airspace. Mr. President.
Monica Crowley on hand as well as the chief liaison for President Trump with public affairs and serves in a chief usher role as well, welcoming countless foreign heads of state. And there with the 32nd United States ambassador to the United Nations finally coming into office on September 21st, Michael Waltz. And he will be in there for every major meeting with President Trump today as he is set to address the UN General Assembly just moments from now. We will take you to that speech live to hear the MAGA doctrine, to hear peace through strength, the Abraham Accords, to the solving of 7 different global conflicts, some dating back as far as the institution of the State of Israel as currently comprised post-World War II. The world, the map has changed a lot in roughly 80 years. And this is the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. And we've had movements from around the world, including some here at home, that have called for the removal of the United States from the United Nations. And that's something to dialogue about. That's something to discuss. Because this League of Nations is really comprised and composed of far-left globalists who had this vision of one world order, of a one world government. But there's a problem for the communists and the Islamists, the secular globalists that date back to Woodrow Wilson, who once occupied the White House. The far-left progressive thought always seemingly coming from, especially in today's world, from those who are highly educated, those who seek to dominate other people, especially the middle-class Americans, because they have 10 degrees from Harvard, Princeton, wherever it might be, and kudos to them for their study habits. But sadly, at these institutions, it was exposed by great martyrs like Charlie Kirk and warriors like President Trump that it's the educated who seek this mission of destroying the West. Barack Hussein Obama held a book off of Air Force One once, the Post-American World, written by an Islamist. And for those of you who might want to know the definition of what that is, it's someone who wants to use Sharia law as the dominance within their government. So Sharia in and of itself is the antithesis to the American Constitution and Judeo-Christian values. Now, all are welcome here to worship freely, and they should be. And mosques should be protected just as a synagogue or a church, as you have the free worship of expression, the freedom of speech, and the freedom to not worship here in the United States of America. But it's the recognition of where this country comes from and its foundation. Again, 55 of the 56 signers of the Declaration, Bible-believing, church-attending Christians. They were not deists. This narrative that we're somehow atheists is simply not true. And even those who did question the divinity of Christ, like Thomas Jefferson, acknowledged the foundational principles within that of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Immortal words that will last forever and that will stand the test of time. A constitutional republic, if we can keep it, as the great late statesman Benjamin Franklin once said. Tax Network USA is working hard to solve your back taxes. Settle them now, because if you owe them and your tax returns are still unfiled, October 15th is that last-minute deadline, especially if you missed the April 15th this year. Time's running out. It's approaching. Can you believe we're already looking at my watch, September 23rd of 2025, how this year has gone by so fast. If you haven't gathered all of those documents or made any estimated payments, the IRS can garnish your wages. They can freeze your bank accounts. They can even seize your property. You don't want that to happen. But there's help available. It's Tax Network USA, a nationwide tax firm helping taxpayers save over $1 billion in tax debt. They filed hundreds of thousands of tax returns and assisted thousands in reducing their tax burdens. They can help you too. So visit tnusa.com/RSBN. Call today. Don't delay. It's 800-357-1415. It's 800-357-1415. Tax Network USA. It's tnusa.com/RSBN. Our sponsors at Patriot Addict have also added a new deal for the Trump knife. It's back. Get yours at 47knife.com. Get 30% off with code RSBN30. These knives are selling for $69 and goes down to $65 if you purchase a 3 bundle. On top of that, they're giving us 30% off with code RSBN30 right now. So scan that QR code now. I have mine as well, and I might just dive into this deal as well. You know what I do here when we have a new deal? I jump right in it at Patriot Addict Deals, and I might send one to one of my favorite late night hosts. Of course, I say that in jest, but a friend of the network who has to come back on tonight. So out of freedom of speech and celebrating everything good and peaceful and patriotic with this country, might give him a housewarming gift. 47knife.com is your go-to. Coupon code RSBN30. Grab your Trump combat knife today. It is not going to remain there long. These go fast, and with 30% off, quite the deal. So a 3-pack for $65. Scan that QR code now at 47knife.com. As we dive into the news of the day, President Trump will deliver a major address to the United Nations General Assembly. And we will toss there now live President Trump to give an address to the United Nations.
Projeto de lei para fomentar a concorrência nos mercados digitais e para incentivar a instalação de data centers sustentáveis.
Data centers. To mitigate the risks of artificial intelligence, we are committed to building multilateral governance in line with the Global Digital Compact that was approved in this plenary last year. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, in Latin America and the Caribbean, we are experiencing a time of growing polarization and instability. Maintaining the region as a zone of peace is and was our priority. We are a continent free of weapons of mass destruction, without ethnic or religious conflicts. The comparison between crime and terrorism is worrying. The most effective way to combat drug trafficking is to cooperate to suppress money laundering and limit arms trade. Using lethal force in situations that do not constitute armed conflict is tantamount to executing people without trial. Other parts of the planet have already witnessed interventions that cause greater damage than intended, with serious humanitarian consequences. The path to dialogue must not be closed in Venezuela. Haiti has the right to a violence-free future, and it is unacceptable that Cuba be listed as a country that sponsors terrorism. In the conflict in Ukraine, we all already know that there will be no military solution. The recent meeting in Alaska raised hopes for a negotiated way out. It's necessary to pave the way for a realistic solution. This implies taking into account the legitimate security concerns of all parties. The African Initiative and the Friends for Peace group created by China and Brazil can help promote dialogue and a diplomatic solution. No situation is more emblematic of the disproportionate and illegal use of force than the one occurring in Palestine. The terrorist attacks perpetrated by Hamas are indefensible from any angle, but nothing, absolutely nothing, justifies the ongoing genocide in Gaza. There, under tons of rubble, are buried tens of thousands of innocent women and children. There, we can see that international humanitarian law and the myth of ethical exceptionalism of the West are also being buried there. This massacre would not have happened without the complicity of those who could have prevented it. In Gaza, hunger is used as a weapon of war, and the forced displacement of populations goes on unpunished. I express my admirations to the Jews who, inside and outside Israel, oppose this collective punishment. The Palestinian people are at risk of disappearing. They will only survive with an independent state integrated to the international community. This is the solution defended by more than 150 UN members, reaffirmed yesterday here in this very plenary, but bared by a single veto. It is regrettable that President Mahmoud Abbas was prevented by the host country of occupying the Palestinian bench at this historical moment. The spread of this conflict to Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Qatar is fueling an unprecedented arms build-up. Madam President, bombs and nuclear weapons will not protect us from the climate crisis. The year of 24 was the warmest already registered. COP30 in the city of Belém, Brazil, will the cope of truth. It will be the time for world leaders to prove the seriousness of their commitment to the planet. Without a complete picture of the NDC's nationally determined contributions, we were walking blindfolded towards the abyss. Brazil has committed to reducing its emissions by 59% and 67%, covering all greenhouse gases and all sectors of the economy. Developing nations face climate change while grappling with other challenges. Meanwhile, rich countries enjoy a standard of living reached at the expense of 200 years of greenhouse gas emissions, demanding greater ambition and greater access to resources and technology. It's not a matter of charity, but of justice. The race for critical minerals essential for energy transition cannot reproduce the predatory and asymmetrical logic that has characterized recent centuries. In Belém City, the world will learn about the reality of the Amazon. Brazil has already reduced deforestation by half in the region in the last 2 years. Eradicating it requires ensuring decent living conditions for its millions of inhabitants. Promoting sustainable development is the objective of the Tropical Forest Forever facility, which Brazil intends to launch to compensate countries that keep their forests standing. But the time has come to move from the negotiation phase to the implementation stage. The world owes a lot to the regime created by the Climate Convention. Climate change needs to be brought to the heart of the UN so that it gets the attention it deserves. A council linked to the General Assembly with the power and legitimacy to monitor commitments provide coherence to climate action. This is a fundamental step towards a broader reform of the organization, which would also include an expanded Security Council in the 2 member categories. Few areas have worsened as much as the multilateral trading system. Unilateral measures have rendered fundamental principles, such as the most favored nations clauses, meaningless. They have disrupted value chains and threw the global economy into a pernicious spiral of high prices and stagnation. It is urgent to refound the WTO based on modern and flexible foundations. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this year, the world lost 2 exceptional public figures. Former Uruguayan President Pepe Mujica and our dear Pope Francis. Both embodied the best humanist values like no other. Their lives were intertwined with the 8 decades of the UN's existence. If they were still among us, they would use this platform to remember that authoritarianism environmental degradation, and inequality are not relentless, that the only ones defeated are those who stand idly by, resignate, and that we can defeat the false prophets and oligarchs who exploit fear and monetize hate, and that tomorrow is made of daily choices, and it takes courage to act to transform it. In the future that Brazil envisions, there is no room for the reenactment of ideological rivalries or spheres of influence. Confrontation is not inevitable. We need leaders with clear visions who understand that the international order is not a zero-sum game. The 21st century will be increasingly multipolar. For it to remain peaceful, it cannot fall to multilateral. Brazil is giving increasing importance to the European Union, the African Union, ASEAN, CELAC, BRICS, and the G20. The voice of the Global South must be heard. The UN has today almost 4 times more members than the 51 who were at its foundation. Our historic mission is to make it once again a barrier of hope and a promoter of equality, peace, sustainable development, diversity, and tolerance. May God bless us all. And thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, the Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Donald Trump, President of the United States of America. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble. Hello, Madam First Lady. Thank you very much for being here. And Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, First Lady of the United States, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and world leaders, 6 years have passed since I last stood in this grand hall and addressed a world that was prosperous and at peace in my first term. Since that day, the guns of war have shattered the peace I forged on 2 continents. An era of calm and stability gave way to one of the great crises of our time. And here in the United States, 4 years of weakness, lawlessness, and radicalism under the last administration delivered our nation into a repeated set of disasters. 1 year ago, our country was in deep trouble, but today, just 8 months into my administration, we are the hottest country anywhere in the world, and there is no other country even close. America is blessed with the strongest economy, the strongest borders, the strongest military, the strongest friendships, and the strongest spirit of any nation on the face of the earth. This is indeed the golden age of America. We are rapidly reversing the economic calamity we inherited from the previous administration, including ruinous price increases and record-setting inflation like we've never had before. Under my leadership, energy costs are down, gasoline prices are down, grocery prices are down, mortgage rates are down, and inflation has been defeated. The only thing that's up is the stock market, which just hit a record high. In fact, it hit a record high 48 times in the last short period of time. Growth is surging, manufacturing is booming. The stock market, as I said, is doing better than it's ever done. And all of you in this room benefit by that, almost everybody. And importantly, workers' wages are rising at the fastest pace in more than 60 years. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? In 4 years of President Biden, we had less than $1 trillion of new investment into the United States. In just 8 months since I took office, we have secured commitments and money already paid for $17 trillion. Think of it, 4 years, less than $1 trillion, 8 months, much more than $17 trillion is being invested in the United States, and it's now pouring in from all parts of the world. We've implemented the largest tax cuts in American history and the largest regulation cuts in American history, making this once and again the best country on earth to do business. And many of the people in this room are investing in America, and it's turned out to be an awfully good investment during this 8-month period. In my first term, I built the greatest economy in the history of the world. We had the best economy ever, history of the world. And I'm doing the same thing again, but this time it's actually much bigger and even better. The numbers far surpass my record-setting first term. On our southern border, we have successfully repelled a colossal invasion. And for the last 4 months, and that's 4 months in a row, the number of illegal aliens admitted and entering our country has been 0. Hard to believe, because if you look back just a year ago, it was millions and millions of people pouring in from all over the world, from prisons, from mental institutions, drug dealers. All over the world they came. They just poured into our country with the ridiculous open border policy of the Biden administration. Our message is very simple. If you come illegally into the United States, you're going to jail, or you're going back to where you came from, or perhaps even further than that. You know what that means. I want to thank the country of El Salvador for the successful and professional job they've done in receiving and jailing so many criminals that entered our country. And it was under the previous administration that the number became record-setting, and they're all being taken out. We have no choice. And other countries have no choice, because other countries are in the exact same situation with immigration. It's destroying your country, and you have to do something about it. On the world stage, America is respected again like it has never been respected before. You think about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or 1 year ago, we were a laughingstock all over the world. At the NATO summit in June, virtually all NATO members formally committed to increase defense spending at my request from 2% to 5% of GDP, making our alliance far stronger and more powerful than it was ever before. In May, I traveled to the Middle East to visit my friends and rebuild our partnerships in the Gulf and those valued relationships with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE and other countries are now, I believe, closer than ever before. My administration has negotiated one historic trade deal after another, including with the United Kingdom, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and many, many others. Likewise, in a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. You're never going to get them solved. Some were going for 31 years, 2 of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years. One was 28 years. I ended 7 wars. And in all cases, they were raging with countless thousands of people being killed. This includes Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Congo and Rwanda, a vicious, violent war that was, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. It included all of them. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that. And I did it in just 7 months. It's never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. I think I should just do it the other way. It's easier. Thank you very much. I didn't think of it at the time because I was too busy working to save millions of lives. That is the saving and stopping of these wars. But later I realized that the United Nations wasn't there for us. They weren't there. I thought of it really after the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action. Now, after ending all of these wars and also earlier negotiating the Abraham Accords, which is a very big thing for which our country received no credit, never receives credit. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements. But for me, the real prize will be the sons and daughters who live to grow up with their mothers and fathers, because millions of people are no longer being killed in endless and unglorious wars. What I care about is not winning prizes, it's saving lives. We saved millions and millions of lives with the 7 wars. And we have others that we're working on, and you know that. Many years ago, a very successful real estate developer in New York, known as Donald J. Trump, I bid on the renovation and rebuilding of this very United Nations complex. I remember it so well. I said at the time that I would do it for $500 million, rebuilding everything. It would be beautiful. I used to talk about, I'm going to give you marble floors. They're going to give you terrazzo. I'm going to give you the best of everything. You're going to have mahogany walls. They're going to give you plastic. But they decided to go in another direction, which was much more expensive at the time, and which actually produced a far inferior product. And I realized that they did not know what they were doing when it came to construction, and that their building concepts were so wrong, and the product that they were proposing to build was so bad and so costly. It was going to cost them a fortune. And I said, and wait till you see the overruns. Well, I turned out to be right. They had massive cost overruns and spent between $2 and $4 billion on the building and did not even get the marble floors that I promised them. You walk on terrazzo. Do you notice that? As far as I'm concerned, frankly, looking at the building and getting stuck on the escalator, they still haven't finished the job. They still haven't finished. That was years ago. The project was so corrupt that Congress actually asked me to testify before them on the tremendous waste of money, because it turned out that they had no idea what it was, but they knew it was anywhere between $2 and $4 billion as opposed to $500 million with a guarantee. But they had no idea, and I said it cost much more than $5 billion. Unfortunately, many things in the United Nations are happening just like that, but on an even much bigger scale, much, much bigger. Very sad to see. Whether the UN can manage to play a productive role, I've come here today to offer the hand of American leadership and friendship to any nation in this assembly that is willing to join us in forging a safer, more prosperous world. And it's a world that we'll be much happier with. A dramatically better future is within our reach. But to get there, we must reject the failed approaches of the past and work together to confront some of the greatest threats in history. There is no more serious danger to our planet today than the most powerful and destructive weapons ever devised by man, of which the United States, as you know, has many. Just as I did in my first term, I've made containing these threats a top priority, starting with the nation of Iran. My position is very simple. The world's #1 sponsor of terror can never be allowed to possess the most dangerous weapon. That's why, shortly after taking office, I sent the so-called Supreme Leader a letter making a generous offer. I extended a pledge of full cooperation in exchange for a suspension of Iran's nuclear program. The regime's answer was to continue their constant threats to their neighbors and U.S. interests throughout the region and some great countries that are right nearby. Today, many of Iran's former military commanders, in fact, I can say almost all of them, are no longer with us. They're dead. And 3 months ago, in Operation Midnight Hammer, 7 American B-2 bombers dropped the 14 30,000-pound each bombs on Iran's key nuclear facilities, totally obliterating everything. No other country on earth could have done what we did. No other country has the equipment to do what we did. We have the greatest weapons on earth. We hate to use them. But we did something that for 22 years people wanted to do. With Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity demolished, I immediately brokered an end to the 12-day war, as it's called, between Israel and Iran, with both sides agreeing to fight no longer. As everyone knows, I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Have to get that done Have to get it done. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities, including October 7th, even while they refuse to release the hostages or accept a ceasefire. Instead of giving to Hamas and giving so much, because they've taken so much, they have taken so much. This could have been solved so long ago. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now. Thank you. Thank you. As we have got to come together, and we will come together, got to get it done. We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it. We have to get it done. We have to negotiate, immediately have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back. We want all 20 back. We don't want 2 and 4. As you know, I got, along with Steve Witkoff and others that helped us, Marco Rubio, we got most of them back. We were involved in all of them. But I always said the last 20 are going to be the hardest, and that's exactly what happened. We have to get them back now. We don't want to get back 2, and then another 2, and then 1, and then 3. Have this process. No, we want them all back, and we want the actually 38 dead bodies back, too. Those parents came to me, and they want them back, and they want them back very quickly and very badly, as though they were alive. They want them. They want them every bit as much as if their son or daughter were alive. I've also been working relentlessly, stopping the killing in Ukraine. I thought that would be, of the 7 wars that I stopped, I thought that would be the easiest because of my relationship with President Putin, which had always been a good one. I thought that was going to be the easiest one. But, you know, in war, you never know what's going to happen. There are always lots of surprises, both good and bad. Everyone thought Russia would win this war in 3 days, but it didn't work out that way. It was supposed to be just a quick little skirmish. It's not making Russia look good. It's making them look bad. No matter what happens from here on out, this was something that should have taken a matter of days, certainly less than a week, and they've been fighting for 3.5 years and killing anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 young soldiers, mostly soldiers, on both sides, every single week, from 5,000 to 7,000 dead young people, and some in cities, much smaller numbers, where rockets are shot, where drones are dropped. This war would never have started if I were president. This was a war that should have never happened. It shows you what leadership is, what bad leadership can do to a country. Look what happened to the United States, and look where we are right now in just a short period of time. The only question now is how many more lives will be needlessly lost on both sides. China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? In the event that Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, then the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs, which would stop the bloodshed, I believe, very quickly. But for those tariffs to be effective, European nations, all of you are gathered here right now, would have to join us in adopting the exact same measures. I mean, you're much closer to this. We have an ocean in between. You're right there. And Europe has to step it up. They can't be doing what they're doing. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while they're fighting Russia. It's embarrassing to them, and it was very embarrassing to them when I found out about it, I can tell you that. They have to immediately cease all energy purchases from Russia. Otherwise, we're all wasting a lot of time. So I'm ready to discuss this. We're going to discuss it today with the European nations, all gathered here. I'm sure they're thrilled to hear me speak about it, but that's the way it is. I like to speak my mind and speak the truth. As we seek to reduce the threat of dangerous weapons today, I'm also calling on every nation to join us in ending the development of biological weapons once and for all. And biological is terrible, and nuclear is even beyond, and we include nuclear in that. We want to have a cessation of the development of nuclear weapons. We know, and I get to view it all the time. Sir, would you like to see? And I look at weapons that are so powerful that we just can't ever use them. If we ever use them, the world literally might come to an end. There would be no United Nations to be talking about. There would be no nothing. Just a few years ago, reckless experiments overseas gave us a devastating global pandemic. Yet despite that worldwide catastrophe, many countries are continuing extremely risky research into bioweapons and man-made pathogens. This is unbelievably dangerous. To prevent potential disasters, I'm announcing today that my administration will lead an international effort to enforce Biological Weapons Convention, which is going to be meeting with the top leaders of the world by pioneering an AI verification system that everyone can trust. Hopefully the UN can play a constructive role, and it will also be one of the early projects under AI. Let's see how good it is, because a lot of people are saying it could be one of the great things ever, but it also can be dangerous, but it can be put to tremendous use and tremendous good, and this would be an example of that. Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. We have reasserted that America belongs to the American people, and I encourage all countries to take their own stand in defense of their citizens as well. You have to do that because I see it. I'm not mentioning names. I see it, and I can call every single one of them out. You're destroying your countries. They're being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody is ever, and nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out. It's not sustainable. And because they choose to be politically correct, they're doing just absolutely nothing about it. And I have to say, I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat, tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before, with different customs, religions, with different everything. Where migrants have violated laws, lodged false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons, they should, in many cases, be immediately sent home. And while we will always have a big heart for places and people that are struggling and truly compassionate, answers will be given. We have to solve the problem, and we have to solve it in their countries, not create new problems in our countries. And we are very helpful to a lot of countries that are just not able to send their people anymore. They used to send them to us in caravans of 25,000, 30,000 people each. These massive caravans of people pouring into our country, totally unchecked and unvetted. But not anymore. According to the Council of Europe, in 2024, almost 50% of inmates in German prisons were foreign nationals or migrants. In Austria, the number was 53% of the people in prisons were from places that weren't from where they are now. In Greece, the number was 54%, and in Switzerland, beautiful Switzerland, 72% of the people in prisons are from outside of Switzerland. When your prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who repaid kindness, and that's what they did, they repaid kindness with crime, it's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. See, I can tell you, I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. In America, we've taken bold action to swiftly shut down uncontrolled migration. Once we started detaining and deporting everyone who crossed the border and removing illegal aliens from the United States, they simply stopped coming. They're not coming anymore. We're getting a lot of credit, but they're not coming anymore. This was a humanitarian act for all involved, because on the trips up, thousands of people a week were dying. Women were being raped. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Raped, horribly beaten, raped. On the trip up, the journey up, it was a long walk. It was a long, arduous journey, indeed. And it was also a historic victory against human trafficking throughout the region. What we did was a victory, and we saved so many lives of people that wouldn't make the journey. That journey was loaded up with death. Loaded up with death. Dead bodies all along the roads of jungles to get up. They go through jungles, they go through areas so hot you couldn't breathe. They were dying of suffocation, areas so hot that you couldn't breathe. Dead bodies all over. By them not coming, we're saving tremendous numbers of lives. My people have done a fantastic job in doing what they did, and the American public agrees with it. I mean, I was very proud to see this morning I have the highest poll numbers I've ever had. Part of it is because of what we've done on the border. I guess the other part is what we've done on the economy. Joe Biden's policies empowered murderous gangs, human smugglers, child traffickers, drug cartels, and prisoners from all over the world. The previous administration also lost nearly 300,000 children. Think of that. They lost more than 300,000 children, little children, who were trafficked into the United States on the Biden watch. many of whom have been raped, exploited, and abused, and sold. Sold. Nobody talks about that. The fake news doesn't write about it. With many others, young children who are missing or dead. And we found a lot of these children, and we're sending them back, and we've been sending them back to their parents. They said, nobody knows who they are. They said, where do you come from? And they'll give us a country, and we'll find out, and we'll figure it out, and we'll bring them back to their homes. And the mother and father rush to the door, and their tears in their eyes. They can't believe that they're seeing their son or daughter, their little son or daughter again. We've done almost 30,000 of them so far. Any system that results in the mass trafficking of children is inherently evil. Yet that is exactly what the globalist migration agenda has done, and it's what it's all about. In America, those days, as you know, are over. The Trump administration is working, and we are continuing to work to track down the villains that are causing this problem, and also, as I said, to get back the 30,000 we've already returned. Now I think we're going to have another. We're going to find a lot. You're not going to find all of them. 300, more than 300,000. They're lost or they're dead. They're lost or they're dead because of the animals that did this. To protect our citizens, I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as and you see this, and you see it happening right before your eyes. Let's put it this way. People don't like taking big loads of drugs in boats anymore. There aren't too many boats that are traveling on the seas by Venezuela. They tend not to want to travel very quickly anymore. And we've virtually stopped drugs coming into our country by sea. We call them the water drugs. They kill hundreds of thousands of people. I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as foreign terrorist organizations, along with two bloodthirsty transnational gangs, probably the worst gangs anywhere in the world, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is from Venezuela, by the way. Such organizations torture, maim, mutilate, and murder with impunity. They're the enemies of all humanity. And for this reason, we've recently begun using the supreme power of the United States military to destroy Venezuelan terrorists and trafficking networks led by Nicolas Maduro. To every terrorist thug smuggling poisonous drugs into the United States of America, please be warned that we will blow you out of existence. That's what we're doing. We have no choice. Can't let it happen. They're destroying. I believe we lost 300,000 people last year to drugs, 300,000. Fentanyl and other drugs. Each boat that we sink carries drugs that would kill more than 25,000 Americans. We will not let that happen. Energy is another area where the United States is now thriving like never before. We're getting rid of the falsely named renewables. By the way, they're a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the plants that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Those big windmills are so pathetic and so bad, so expensive to operate. And they have to be rebuilt all the time, and they start to rust and rot. Most expensive energy ever conceived, and it's actually energy. You're supposed to make money with energy, not lose money. You lose money, the governments have to subsidize. You can't put them out without massive subsidies. And most of them are built in China, and I give China a lot of credit. They build them, but they very few wind farms. So why is it that they build them and they send them all over the world, but they barely use them? You know what they use? Coal. They use gas. They use almost anything, but they don't like wind. But they sure as hell like selling the windmills. Europe, on the other hand, has a long way to go, with many countries being on the brink of destruction because of the green energy agenda. And I give a lot of credit to Germany. Germany was being led down a very sick path, both on immigration, by the way, and on energy. They were going green, and they were going bankrupt. And the new leadership came in, and they went back to where they were, with fossil fuel and with nuclear, which is good. restaurants. Your wife can walk down the middle of the street with or without you. Nothing's going to happen. My people have done a fantastic job. And yes, I called in the National Guard, and the National Guard took care of business, and they weren't politically correct, but they took care of business. We got 1,700 career criminals out, brought them back to where they came from, the countries where they came from, or put them in jails. Washington, D.C. is now a totally safe city again, and I welcome you to come. In fact, we'll have dinner together at a local restaurant, and we'll be able to walk. We don't have to go by an armor-plated vehicle. We'll walk right over there from the White House. They've given up their powerful edge, a lot of the countries that we're talking about, in oil and gas, such as essentially closing the great North Sea oil. Oh, the North Sea, I know it so well. Aberdeen was the oil capital of Europe, and there's tremendous oil that hasn't been found in the North Sea. Tremendous oil. And I was with the Prime Minister I respect and like a lot, and I said, you're sitting with the greatest asset. They essentially closed it by making it so highly taxed that no developer, no oil company can go there. They have tremendous oil left, and more importantly, they have tremendous oil that hasn't even been found yet. And what a tremendous asset for the United Kingdom. And I hope the Prime Minister is listening, because I told it to him 3 days in a row. That's all he heard. North Sea oil, North Sea, because I want to see them do well. I want to stop seeing them ruining that beautiful Scottish and English countryside with windmills and massive solar panels that go 7 miles by 7 miles, taking away farmland. But we're not letting this happen in America. In 1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. He said that it will be irreversible, as any nuclear holocaust would be. This is what they said at the United Nations. What happened? Here we are. Another UN official stated in 1989 that within a decade, entire nations could be wiped off the map by global warming. Not happening. You know, it used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world. But then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at predicting things, you know. They actually said during the campaign they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything. And I'm telling you that if you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going to fail. And if you don't stop people that you've never seen before, that you have nothing in common with, your country is going to fail. I'm the President of the United States, but I worry about Europe. I love Europe. I love the people of Europe. And I hate to see it being devastated by energy and immigration. This double-tailed monster destroys everything in its wake, and they cannot let that happen any longer. You're doing it because you want to be nice. You want to be politically correct, and you're destroying your heritage. They must take control strongly and immediately of the unmitigated immigration disaster and the fake energy catastrophe before it's too late. The carbon footprint is a hoax made up by people with evil intentions, and they're heading down a path of total destruction. You know, the carbon footprint was a big, big thing a few years ago. I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, And then President Obama would get into Air Force One, a massive Boeing 747, and not a new one, an old one with old engines that spew everything into the atmosphere. He'd talk about the carbon footprint, we must do so. Then he'd get in and he'd fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he'd get back onto that big, beautiful plane and he'd fly back and he'd talk about, again, global warming and the carbon footprint. It's a con job. At extreme cost and expense, Europe reduced its own carbon footprint by 37%. Think of that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. You cost yourself a lot of jobs, a lot of factories closed, but you reduced the carbon footprint by 37%. However, for all of that sacrifice and much more, it's been totally wiped out and then some by a global increase of 54%. Much of it coming from China and other countries that are thriving around China, which now produces more CO2 than all the other developed nations in the world. So all of these countries are working so hard on the carbon footprint, which is nonsense, by the way. It's nonsense. You know, it's interesting. In the United States, we have still radicalized environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable, and you have it too. But, you know, we have a border, strong, and we have a shape, and that shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape is amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the most clean air, and I think we do, we have very clean air. We have the cleanest air we've had in many, many years. But the problem is that other countries, like China, which has air that's a little bit rough, it blows. And no matter what you're doing down here, the air up here tends to get very dirty because it comes in from other countries where their air isn't so clean. And the environmentalists refuse to acknowledge that. Same thing with garbage. In Asia, they dump much of their garbage right into the ocean. And over about a 1 week and 2 week journey, it flows right past Los Angeles. You've seen it. Massive amounts of garbage, almost too much to do anything about, flowing past Los Angeles, past San Francisco. And then somebody will get in trouble because he dropped a cigarette on the beach. The whole thing is crazy. The primary effect of these brutal green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down to polluting countries that break the rules and are making a fortune. They're making a fortune. European electricity bills are now 4 to 5 times more expensive than those in China and 2 to 3 times higher than the United States. And our bills are coming way down. You probably see that our gasoline prices are way down. You know, we have an expression, drill, baby, drill, and that's what we're doing. We're going to be much lower in a year from now. But they've come way down over the last year. As a result, every air conditioner is like very uncommon to see one in some of these countries because the electric costs are so high. So while the U.S. has approximately 1,300 heat-related deaths annually, that's a lot, Europe loses more than 175,000 people to heat deaths each year because the costs are so expensive you can't turn on an air conditioner. What is that all about? That's not Europe. That's not the Europe that I love and know. All in the name of pretending to stop the global warming hoax. The entire globalist concept of asking successful industrialized nations to inflict pain on themselves and radically disrupt their entire societies must be rejected completely and totally, and it must be immediate. That's why in America I withdrew from the fake Paris Climate Accord, where, by the way, America was paying so much more than every country. Others weren't paying. China didn't have to pay until 2030. Russia was given an old standard that was easy to meet, a 1990 standard. For the United States, we're supposed to pay like $1 trillion. And I said, this is another scam. The fact is, the United States has been taken advantage of by the world for many, many years, but not any longer, as you probably noticed. I unleashed massive energy production and signed historic executive orders to hunt for oil, but we don't have to do much hunting because we have the most oil of any nation anywhere, oil and gas in the world. And if you add coal, we have the most of any nation in the world. Clean, I call it clean, beautiful coal. You can do things today with coal that you couldn't have done 10 years ago, 15 years. So I have a little standing order in the White House. Never use the word coal, only use the words clean, beautiful coal. Sounds much better, doesn't it? But we stand ready to provide any country with abundant, affordable energy supplies if you need them, when most of you do. We're proudly exporting energy all over the world. We're now the largest exporter. In the United States, we want trade and robust commerce with all nations, everybody. We want to help nations. We're going to help nations. But it must also be fair and reciprocal. The challenge with trade is much the same with climate. The countries that followed the rules, all their factories have been plundered. It's really sad to watch. They've been broken. They've been broken by countries that broke the rules. That's why the United States is now applying tariffs to other countries, and much as these tariffs were for many years applied to us, uncontrollably applied to us. We've used tariffs as a defense mechanism under the Trump administration, including my first term, where hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs were taken in. And by the way, we had the lowest inflation, and now we have very low inflation. The only thing different is that we have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into our country. But this is how we will ensure that the system works for everyone and is sustainable into the future. We're also using tariffs to defend our sovereignty and security throughout the world, including against nations that have taken advantage of former U.S. administrations for decades, including the most corrupt, incompetent administration in history, the sleepy Joe Biden administration. Brazil now faces major tariffs in response to its unprecedented efforts to interfere in the rights and freedoms of our American citizens and others, with censorship, repression, weaponization, judicial corruption, and targeting of political critics in the United States. I have a little problem saying this because I must tell you, I was walking in and the leader of Brazil was walking out. We saw him and I saw him, he saw me, and we embraced. And then I'm saying, can you believe I'm going to be saying this in just 2 minutes? But we actually agreed that we would meet next week. We didn't have much time to talk, like about 20 seconds. They were in retrospect, I'm glad I waited because this thing didn't work out too well. But we did talk. We had a good talk, and we agreed to meet next week, if that's of interest. But he seemed like a very nice man, actually. He liked me, I liked him. But if you, and I only do business with people I like. When I don't like them, I don't like them. But we had, at least for about 39 seconds, we had excellent chemistry. It's a good sign. But also in the past, Brazil, can you believe this, unfairly tariffed our nation, but now because of our tariffs, we are hitting them back, and we're hitting them back very hard. As president, I will always defend our national sovereignty and the rights of American citizens. So I'm very sorry to say this, that Brazil is doing poorly and will continue to do poorly. They can only do well when they're working with us. Without us, they will fail, just as others have failed. It's true. Next year, the United States will celebrate the 250th anniversary of our glorious independence, a testament to enduring power and American freedom and spirit. We will also be proudly hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and shortly thereafter, the 2028 Olympics, which is going to be very exciting. I hope you all come. I hope that countless people from all over the globe will take part of these these will be great celebrations of liberty and human achievement, and that together we all can rejoice in the miracles of history that began in July 4th, 1776, when we founded the light to all nations. And it's something really that an amazing thing came out of that date. It's called the United States of America. In honor of this momentous anniversary, I hope that all countries who find inspiration in our example will join us in renewing our commitment, values, and those values really that we hold so dear. Together, let us defend free speech and free expression. Let us protect religious liberty, including for the most persecuted religion on the planet today. It's called Christianity. And let us safeguard our sovereignty and cherish qualities that have made each of our nations so special, incredible, and extraordinary. In closing, I just want to repeat that immigration and the high cost of so-called green renewable energy is destroying a large part of the free world and a large part of our planet. Countries that cherish freedom are fading fast because of their policies on these two subjects. You need strong borders and traditional energy sources if you are going to be great again. Whether you have come from north or south, east or west, near or far, every leader in this beautiful hall today represents a rich culture, a noble history, and a proud heritage that makes each nation majestic and unique, unlike anything else in human history or any other place on the face of the earth. From London to Lima, from Rome to Athens, from Paris to Seoul, from Cairo to Tokyo and Amsterdam to right here in New York City, we stand on the shoulders of the leaders and legends, generals and giants, heroes and titans who won and built our beloved nations, all of our nations, with their own courage, strength, spirit, and skill. Our ancestors climbed mountains, conquered oceans, crossed deserts, and trekked over wide open plains. They charged into thunderous battles, plunged into grave dangers, and they were soldiers and farmers and workers and warriors and explorers and patriots. They built towns into cities, tribes into kingdoms, ideas into industries, and small islands into mighty empires. You're a part of all of that. They were champions for their people who never gave up and who never, ever gave in. Their values defined our national identities. Their visions forged our magnificent destiny. Everybody in this room is a part of it in your own way. Each of us inherits the deeds and the myths, the triumphs, the legacies of our own heroes and founders who so bravely showed us the way. Our ancestors gave everything for homelands that they defended with pride, with sweat, with blood, with life, and with death. Now the righteous task of protecting the nations that they built belongs to each and every one of us. So together let us uphold our sacred duty to our people and to our citizens. Let us protect their borders, ensure their safety, preserve their cultures, treasure, and traditions, and fight for their precious dreams and their cherished freedoms. And in friendship and really a beautiful vision, let us all work together to build a bright, beautiful planet, a planet that we all share, a planet of peace and a world that is richer, better, and more beautiful than ever before. That can happen. It will happen. It will happen, and I hope it can happen and start right now, right at this moment. We'll turn it around. We're going to make our countries better, safer, more beautiful. We're going to take care of our people. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. God bless the nations of the world. Thank you very much. Bye.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the United States.
And President Trump with the MAGA Doctrine 2.0, addressing the UN General Assembly, criticizing climate change. As he said, it once was the cooling of the climate to global warming, now climate change, so you can always be right, encouraging other nations to get out of the Green New Scam. And he's right, it will destroy the economies of countless nations if they continue on that path. Also, breaking some news that he will meet with the gentleman who spoke right before him, the leader of the Workers' Party in Brazil, known as Lula, next week in Washington, D.C., very likely. So some breaking news there that they had about 20 seconds in the hall to meet together. President Trump looking forward to that meeting as he called out, again, Brazil for not doing very well economically speaking and speaking out against illegal immigration and really commenting on the migrant crisis in Europe. So lots to take away from that speech, all while encouraging from great cities and civilizations to work towards peace and highlighting the amount of peace he's helped with the world and the use of tariffs in order to restructure a global economy. So a fantastic speech by President Trump that I'm sure will be criticized by, again, the communists, the Islamists, and the deep staters and those secular globalists who have a very different outlook on the world. But someone who is humorous, forthcoming, extraordinarily straightforward, and gets to the point in a speech that roughly was around that 1 hour mark. Thank you to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Prepare your medicine cabinet before flu season with Tamiflu, hydrochloroquine, NAD+, methylene blue. In fact, over 200 essential medications that you can take on the road with you as well. And the QR code now, and RSBN10 is your 10% off code. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, your go-to online pharmacy. No insurance, no issue, no red tape, no bureaucracy, just doctors and pharmacists focused on your health and well-being. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN and Kalshi.com/RSBN. You can make bets today on bilateral meetings that President Trump will be having with a number of different leaders throughout the General Assembly, including Michael Waltz, the UN ambassador, Secretary of State Marco Rubio involved in those, including First Lady Melania Trump hosting gatherings as well. We'll have a separate stream to showcase all of that throughout the day. But who will win that Nobel Peace Prize? Donald Trump being at the top of that list, no question, solving 7 international conflicts in nearly 250 days in office. Will Zelensky meet Putin in January? Will it be bilateral, trilateral, as both leaders have requested the presence of President Trump? Also, who will win the World Series? Questions like music, sports, culture, politics, all of the above at Kalshi.com/RSBN. Trade on anything. Scan that QR code right now. Thank you for sponsoring us here on the right side of history. Get all America First updates and exclusive offers at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. As we close this stream, stick with us for further coverage of President Trump's visit to the 80th United Nations General Assembly. An important time to focus on a world that has changed so much since his last speech there 6 years ago. From the America First Peace Through Strength agenda, we saw what happened under the auto pen, not only to our nation, but abroad, as President Trump and his cabinet works to fix and mend relations across the world. Also, a happy Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, to our Jewish brethren and believers, as that 2-day celebration is underway. Thoughts and prayers with those who God revealed himself to first. And as Leviticus 23 through 25 remind us that these are the days of awe, high holy days for our Jewish brothers and sisters and for all of us as we reflect upon the great gift that is the United States of America. We'll close out this stream and go to the next one. So stick with us right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network as we bring you unbridled access to the 80th General Assembly at the United Nations. For all of my colleagues here at Right Side Broadcasting, I'm Robert McNeely. Have a wonderful rest of your morning and stick with us on the next stream. We'll see you in a moment.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interviewed the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back-in-stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets, only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings. Regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.